We're 2 minutes late is where we are.
Okay. Too much fun. Okay, we will start the meeting. Welcome, everyone. This is the Grand Traverse County Resource Management Administration Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, April 9th, 2014. It's a little bit after 6 p.m. And if you have a cell phone, if you could put that on silent or vibrate, we would appreciate that. And we will call this meeting to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And if Commissioner Lemko could lead us in that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if we can have the clerk call the roll call, please.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am.
Thomas.
Yep.
Rennie.
Here.
Maxbauer. Here. Lemkool.
Here.
Lathrop.
Yes.
Inman.
Here. Okay. We have a quorum, and we now will move on to the approval of the March 12th, 2014 RMA committee minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the March 12th minutes as provided.
Moved by Commissioner Wheelock. Support. Seconded by Commissioner Thomas to approve the minutes of March 12th, 2014. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. All right, this would lead us to our first public comment. We do have another public comment towards the end of the meeting. And if there's a particular issue that you are here for, you may speak other public comment, or if you want to wait till that item comes up for debate and discussion, if you want to speak on that, please get my attention or the clerk's attention. Now we will read the general guidelines for public comment.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provisions of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4 Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
We also want to note that although you have a time limit of somewhere close to 3 minutes, we want to make sure that anyone that's here and wishes to speak would have the time to do so. So we have those rules that will be placed in our agenda and our board rules here soon, but I just wanted to remind the folks that we have already made a determination that we aren't going to have a cutoff time, that everyone has the availability to speak during this comment section. All right. Does anyone wish to speak from the public on any matter? Seeing no hands, we will close public comment, and we will move on to the approval of the agenda. Dave, do you have any other agenda items to present for tonight?
I believe we do. Nope, they're all on the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Moved by Commissioner Lemkool, seconded by Commissioner Rennie, to approve the agenda as presented. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. We have an agenda. We will now move on to the consent calendar. The clerk will read the consent calendar, please.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, received and filed, or approval is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. All information identified on the consent calendar can be viewed in its entirety at www.grandtraverse.org. A. Receive and file. 1. Community Corrections Reports, February. 2. Commission on Aging Program Report, February. 3. Correspondence from Paul Schultz commending Durga for Commission on Aging presentation. 4, Veterans Services Monthly Activity through February 2014. 5, Conservation District Monthly Parkland Responsibilities. 6, Drain Commissioner Annual Report, January 1, 2012 through December 31st, 2013. 7, Road Commission Monthly Report. 8, Letter of Support Accessible Fife Lake DNR Grant. B, Approval. 1, Grand Traverse Sheriff's Office Property Room Surplus. 2, Appointment of Deputy Medical Examiners for Grand Traverse County, Fleece and Young. 3, Approval to Post Office Specialist position.
Okay, you've heard the consent calendar that has been read. As indicated by the clerk, this is an opportunity for the board to vote on all items on one motion. Before we do that, we want to open it up to the public. Does any member of the public wish to pull any of the consent calendar items as read? Seeing none, does any of the Board of Commissioners wish to pull a consent item? Commissioner Maxbauer.
B1, please.
B1. Anyone else? Commissioner Rennie.
A7.
A7. Okay, anyone else?
Which one did you pull?
A7.
A7.
Under receive and file, that'd be Road Commission report. And then Commissioner Maxbauer had B1, the property room surplus issue.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the consent calendar with the exceptions of items A7 and B1.
Okay, second? Second by Commissioner Lemko. So we have a motion on the floor to approve the consent calendar by Commissioner Wheelock, seconded by Commissioner Lemkool. Roll call vote, please.
Thomas?
Yep.
Rennie?
Yes.
Maxbauer?
Yes.
Lemkool?
Yes.
Lathrop?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Inman?
Yes. Consent calendar is pulled with the exception of 2 items. We do not have any special orders of business tonight, so we move on to item 8, and those are items removed from the consent calendar. We will go to A, receive and file, item 7, Road Commission Monthly Report. Commissioner Rennie, you have the floor. And he knows already to get up to the microphone.
Hi, Jim.
You can introduce yourself, Jim, if you could.
Good evening. Jim Cook, Grand Traverse County Road Commission.
Commissioner Rennie?
Thank you. Jim, I had a couple questions at recent township meetings, board meetings, about when we will see some activity with our 2014 project list.
Soon. You know, as
I
you
tell them
know.
weather. I don't know what to
Yeah.
say.
Well, we're waiting for the frost to come out of the ground. We actually met with, we had a pre-construction meeting with Team Elmer's day before yesterday, and they're ready to go. We're just waiting for the frost to come out of the ground, and they're going to start.
Frost laws off so they can move a truck down the road.
They're going to start doing some preliminary work, you know, that they can do until the frost comes out. You know, we have some grading and shoulder work and some ditching and some tree cutting, and so they're going to get started. Which brings up a good point. This is National Construction Zone Awareness Week. I don't think there's a lot going on this week, but you know, we are going to move forward with 40 miles of road projects, and so you know, typically what you see is people they're pretty upset about the condition of roads or whatever it is that need to be fixed. They're pretty excited when we start. They will be frustrated before we finish, and then, you know, by the end of it, they'll all be happy again, and they'll forget about how frustrated they were. But it's going to be a tough time.
The other 32 miles that's out for bid, what's the status on that?
Well, we just came from a board meeting. We bid 32 miles of chip seal projects. Those come out of our general fund. They're about double what our budget is. So at this point, we will be meeting with our board again next week to talk about, you know, some decisions that we have to make. One of the decisions that we did make was we had a choice. We could contract all that work out, or we could let our own staff work on those projects. And so what we've decided to do is, again, we've laid off some staff. These are the people that work on those types of projects, chip sealing, crack sealing, those types of things. So really the question is do we have enough work for those folks, or are we going to bring them in and have them do that work? So we've chose to do that. We can save some money if we do that. We'll have to manage it just like we would a contractor. And so you'll hear more about it, but my prediction, again, we'll be talking about the budget, balancing our budget, which takes place at the regular meeting in April, but we are working between now and then to get a balanced budget. And this is what we do after winter every year. But my prediction is that, depending on what the board decides they want to do, we'll definitely do less than 32 miles. But the question is how many miles are we going to do?
If we should receive something like this $450,000 for the road and risk reserve funds for winter maintenance, will that impact that 32 miles?
It technically can't. We have to use that on basically winter maintenance. And so what we're going to do is, we're going to apply it to what we spend on winter maintenance, which will help us, in our efforts to balance that budget, which frees up general fund dollars for construction projects.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner Wheelock?
Well, two things. One, you have to remember when we talk about road commission's winter maintenance, they have 2 winters. They have January, February, March, and then they have October, November, December that come into this annual budget. So, if you chew up all your winter maintenance money in the first 3 months, you may be in trouble come December next year. So we always have to keep some of that. But the other piece that I wanted to ask about, Jim, was Lafreniere Road. We talked about there may be some additional state or federal money available to do a major reconstruction of Lafreniere Road. Have we heard anything about that?
Well, I talked to Representative Schmidt yesterday, and he's working hard on, trying to help us fund the Lafreniere Road project. Again, we are working with the township and as well as the county to do from the Hill to Hammond this year. And again, if the stars align, we potentially could do all the way to the intersection. If we were to get that funding, I think it's about a $2 million project by the time you take into account. We have some hill issues to deal with and potentially some easement acquisition and things like that. So what I asked for was about $1.5 million. So we're still going to have to come up with about $500,000 to really deal with that hill, some retaining walls, some easement acquisition and things like that. But right now our plan is we're definitely going to do Hammond to from the Hill to Hammond. That'll happen this year. And if you've been through there, you'll see that we're actually surveying that right now.
I saw lights out there today.
Yeah. And so again, so that's going to move forward, and we'll cross our fingers, because if we get that funding, I mean, that's a big deal. We're going to cut that hill down about 6 feet, I think, is the, we could make it less, but it becomes cost prohibitive. But I think a good solution is we're going to take that down about 6 feet at the top. And so the slope will be, it'll go from about 12% to about 8% slope. And again, our goal is to do all of the intersection as well. So more to come on that.
Okay. Thank you.
And then you haven't asked about seasonal weight restrictions, but
Those damn things are going to be on until the middle of May, guaranteed.
well, actually, I have good news. We are projecting they will come off about sometime between May 3rd and May 5th. Again, depending on the weather, it could happen sooner. So keep your fingers crossed.
Good headlights on my truck, so it's not.
Yeah, the roads really do look good right now, and I think it's because we're having a slow, steady warm up, and we haven't had a lot of rain. It's when we get those. Last year we had a lot of frost, a lot of changes. So we had warm, cold, warm, and that's what really creates potholes as well as the rain. So right now we're kind of holding our own.
The warm rain will bring the frost out of the ground faster than anything else. So.
Well, it will.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming. on the report. We need a motion to receive and file the item.
Motion to approve the road commissioner report.
Second.
Sorry, Charlie, you should have done.
All right, we have a motion. Commissioner Wheelock, second by Commissioner Rennie, to approve the receive and file of the Road Commission monthly report for April 2014. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. We now go on to the second item that was pulled from the consent calendar, and that is item B1 of the Grand Traverse County Sheriff's Office, the property room surplus. Commissioner Maxbauer, you pulled that off the consent calendar. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the items jumped out at me when I read it. Trek Carter's Compost mountain bike. Carter's Compost was just here and received an award for composting. Is that their bicycle?
I haven't got a clue, but I'll check into it.
I'm just guessing that, since Trek I know is definitely a brand name, and Carter's Compost is the young man's business name, so I'm just thinking that there might be a connection there.
I'd highlighted the same thing. Carter's Compost was the 2013 Recycler of the Year in Grand Traverse County.
Yeah, if you call the resource,
I'm thinking if we have one of his bicycles, he should get it back.
I think
I
so.
think he did that work on his bike, didn't he?
So if we could, with that item, if we can have the understanding that you'll just check into that for us before you dispose of it.
And you can get, yeah, just call the Resource Recovery Department. They'll know how to get him, but I'm betting it's his bike.
Could be. Maybe
Do I need to pull that one item so that it is not
No, what we will do.
on the property description?
What I'd like to do is have the motion indicate to approve the property room surplus, surplus. We have to declare it surplus so they can sell it, with the understanding that they'll check into that item before they sell the item.
That's my motion.
Okay. All right.
Support.
All right, moved by Commissioner Maxbauer, seconded by Commissioner Wheelock, to approve the Amherst County property room surplus items as listed in our packet, with the understanding that the Trek Carter's Compost mountain bike will be looked into further before they dispose of that item in a sale. Any other further discussion? Commissioner Rennie.
I'm looking at this list B, 50-inch Westinghouse digital TV. And you're going to use that at your facility, or
If it's good, we typically will use that stuff.
For
tools we
training
pick
or
up
something?
in the RV building. I think those things we put in the weight room, exercise room.
okay? Just wondering.
All right, any other discussion on the item? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor to approve the surplus report with looking into further on the Trek Carter's Compost mountain bike. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. All right. That takes care of the consent calendar and items removed from the consent calendar. We now move on to item 9, department action items. We start out with the Grand Traverse County Sheriff's Office. They have an item here on the deputy's position. Sheriff, you have the floor.
Thank you. Tom Bensley, Grand Traverse County Sheriff. You should have all received a letter indicating that in February we were given, with the hiring freeze, now a hiring delay in place. We were given permission to fill 2 vacancies that were vacant since November. I talked with Mr. Benda last week, and he recommended I come to the board. On May 15th, Lieutenant Morrow will retire from the Sheriff's Office, which will create a vacancy. We would like to fill that. We have one officer who had an interview today for a position with the city, and for his sake, we hope he gets it. Detective Trombley has applied for the code enforcement officer for the city. I think he'd make a great fit, but that's not our choice or our decision to make. If he retires, we will have another vacancy. And we have one officer who is waiting to be hired, I believe, in Ottawa County. She's been told, it's my understanding, that when they get some contracts or similar contracts that we have with the townships, that she's on their hiring list. So we have the potential for an additional 2 vacancies. And as those vacancies occur, when they occur, we would just like to be able to fill those.
Okay. So, clarification, I guess, from the board and the administrator. I believe the previous action of the board by vote allowed you to go out and indicating that you had 4 potential openings to interview for all 4, and the authorization was to hire 2. Is that correct from the previous action?
Well, we were given the okay to fill those 2 positions. Okay?
All right.
And so we had to advertise for those positions, screen the applicants,
Right.
and conduct the interviews, which we have done.
Okay.
Have those
we-
been filled?
I'm sorry?
Are they
Have
filled?
those positions been filled?
We're doing background checks on those individuals right now. And there are other candidates who were interviewed that we feel would be able to fill 2 of these positions, should they occur, and maybe the 3rd one, should that occur. But background checks and psychological evaluations have to be done on all of them, and if something comes up in one of those, now, we probably have to go back and look for more candidates, applications, the whole process over again.
So are you looking for the authorization from the board at this time to do anything?
Yes.
For you? Oh, yes.
I would like to be able to fill Lieutenant Morrow's position
Okay.
when he retires on May 15th.
Okay.
Should Detective Trombley leave prior to that, I would like to be able to fill that position. He may or may not go. And then Deputy Tolman may or may not go, but the indications are she will be at a later time. And I'm only asking to fill those positions so I don't have to come back
So those would be,
when one leaves, and then the next one leaves, and then the next one's leaves.
So
We're not
that-
adding any personnel, we're just filling the vacancies.
correct. So would those 3 positions include the 4 positions that you indicated to us previously? that would be
No,
opening?
we're talking about 5 total.
Now we're talking about additional
2
people.
plus 3.
2
They've
plus
already-
3.
They had 2 that were.
Got it.
Before the first of the year, they had come in and were put on, said we have a
Okay.
hiring freeze. They got approval to fill those. They're in
Okay.
that process. Now, these are new
So we
the
need,
positions
we
we're
need
talking
approval
about.
to fill an additional
1 for sure,
3.
2 possible.
Well, they're not vacant yet,
Okay.
but
If they do
there
become
will be
vacant.
one on May 15th.
All right.
That's for sure.
Okay, I think we understand it. Commissioner Wheelock and then Commissioner Rennie.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to authorize the sheriff to fill up to 3 positions as they become vacant.
Okay. Is there a second?
Yep.
All right, seconded by Commissioner Thomas. And we could just clarify that that is in addition to the previous action of the Board of
The
Commissioners. on
previous
other two.
action fills the 2 positions that have been vacant before the 2
All right,
years,
let's admit-
before the
just-
first of the year.
Yes.
This action fills these 3 identified positions
All right,
today
so let-
as they become vacant. If they do not become vacant, then they don't have authorization.
All right, so that motion has been clarified for the minutes.
with
And
that,
the
sir.
second agree with that? Okay. Now discussion. Commissioner Rennie and then Commissioner Lathrop.
Okay. You have not filled the 2 that are open, but you have interviewed. Is that correct?
Yes,
So there's 2 openings right now.
have been since
You
November.
had talked a while back about the potential of a corrections officer leaving, and I got the impression we had opened it up.
He hasn't left yet.
Is
His
that-
house is
that
for
opened
sale.
up for bid, or is that
No.
posted at all, that position? I would like to ask.
Has it been posted, Captain?
They interviewed this week,
Okay,
and they physically tested numerous weeks ago.
okay. They're in that process. Nobody has been hired yet, but they're trying to identify somebody in the event that that position is vacant.
Okay, so that's 3. Is that correct? The 2 that we had posted plus that potentially. And now you're asking for 3 more.
Well,
I think we should wait it out. and
we're
see if
looking-
these people,
we know we'll have a vacancy on May 15th,
I understand that.
okay? And we have the potential for an additional 2 more. And this is law enforcement. I haven't talked about the corrections. This is only law enforcement.
Understand. I'm looking back with what we've done so far
Right.
to where we are now.
Okay.
I don't know that we should be opening up and putting postings out based on speculation in these times. If you had filled those other positions, I would agree with you. but we still haven't filled those two, although you think you may have someone ready.
We have interviewed people, we're doing background checks.
Okay.
And if those pan out, we will fill the
will,
two
in fact,
vacant
hire.
positions.
Okay.
We will have another vacancy May 15th. Lieutenant Morrow is retiring. He submitted his paperwork, he's gone. We'd like to fill that, be able to fill that position.
And I believe,
And there's two more possibilities coming up. I'm just asking. I can come back every time. If if we have a vacancy, I'll come back. If we have another one, I can come back.
I'm not
just
trying to say you're getting
asking.
redundant, but we're kind of stacking these things up before we get to the facts.
We're just trying to be ahead of it.
Understand? And I
Well-
applaud you for that.
and I believe the nature of the motion is that if they shall come available, then you shall have the
Oh, yeah,
authority.
yeah.
So, we have Commissioner Lathrop, and then we'll go to the administrator.
In filling these new positions,
They're new
well...
They're
not-
just
I
vacancies.
I take it back. In
Yeah.
filling these positions, is there going to be a net increase in what it costs us?
No,
So it'll basically just,
the money's in the budget.
yeah.
The positions have been vacant. Two positions have been vacant since the first of the year.
Okay, cool.
So by the time these people are hired, we've saved 2/3 of one officer's salary just because of the vacancies.
Cool. All right.
Administrator Benda.
Okay, I just want to clarify that when you approve these vacancies to be filled, that you will also authorize them to fill any subsequent vacancies that are based upon promotions into these positions, because when you have a lieutenant position and a detective
Right.
position, it's very likely that someone from one level of the organization is going to move into those positions. That'll create a lower level vacancy, and then you'll just want to clarify that applies to all subsequent vacancies that are a result of the promotional process.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that process. We will go to Commissioner Lemkool and then back to Lathrop.
Okay, my question is how does this affect our retiree benefit, unfunded portion of that? I mean, that's got to have an impact on that, and also our health care. Because, one of these gentlemen I know at least is going to get lifetime health care, and this is unfunded. So, should we start to be putting money away for these retirements to be able to take care of their health insurance as they're going away? So it's just one of those things you want to be thinking about, that this is having that kind of an impact.
Yeah.
Because it is going to save us money, but it's also going to cost us some money.
Yeah, and I think that's just, it all gets blended in at a certain point. But, Dave, did you want to respond to the question?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to, since it's not on our agenda tonight, but it probably will be at Ways and Means, to take $350,000 and set it aside for the unfunded liability of our OPEB.
Okay.
We had that surplus from last year that, as you correctly pointed out, we haven't set aside any money for that other than the pay-as-you-go number. And so I'm asked Dean to figure that number out, what the difference is between pay-as-you-go and what our ARC is supposed to be, our actuarially required contribution will be, and to get the difference in front of the board to approve.
Yep.
So that we can fund that and get it into our financial statements. And
Okay. Commissioner Lathrop.
Back to the money again. I can see that there's going to be some promotions, and it looks like it's going to net out at the same cost. I want to reiterate it. Is that true? If people are getting promoted?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
But it's going to net out at the same cost?
We have different people in those positions. There's no increase in salaries. It's
Okay.
just different people in those positions.
it's actually a decrease for the lieutenant position. The command officers agreed to a reduction in the
Oh, yeah.
the
The new
defined
ones coming
contribution
in,
percentage, so that will drop.
We're gonna,
Plus,
like,
they'll
save
drop
some
back
money.
to the starting salary for that, or
Okay.
depending on who gets promoted in. So there will be some savings just from the turnover.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Any other questions, Commissioner Wheelock?
I guess the one point that I'm compelled to make is the fact that it takes at least 6 to 8 weeks to fill one of these positions. I don't
Training.
want to get to the 1st of June, the 1st of July, and be down 5 people. So I think that's the purpose for moving forward and authorizing this right now. Because, like Tom said, they've been since basically since the first of the year, trying to interview to fill the 2 positions that are currently vacant, and they still aren't through the background checks,
Okay, on your,
psycho checks.
all right, Commissioner Lemko.
I just want to say thank you for bringing this forward early. The last time you came before was on the night of, and so I appreciate the advance notice so that we had time to look at this and to review it, and we appreciate the promptness on that. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to allow the sheriff to fill 3 additional positions within his department and to do the advancement as he sees fit for vacancies, shall they come available. That is the motion on the floor. So we will have a roll call vote, please.
Rennie?
No.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Lemkool?
Yep.
Lathrop?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Inman?
Yes, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate it. Does that conclude the sheriff's report?
That's the only
Okay.
As
All
far
right,
as
just
he
wanted to see,
knows.
make sure if you had anything else. Second item is the IT. There's, that is item 9B in your packet on page 58. All right, you have the floor.
All right, good evening, Don Sheehan. I'm County IT Director, and I'm here tonight, I'm asking to have an existing .5 FTE position increased to .8, and that would give an extra day and a half time in there per week to be able to assist the Sheriff's Department and the City Police. And really, it's coming about because of the mobile computers are the biggest thing, and the number of applications that continue to be loaded on those systems, and just their portability, they're moving around. We're constantly seeming like we're changing out air cards, loading new software, those types of things that create many issues for the officers. And one person there, it is difficult. I mean, they're more in putting out a fire mode rather than being in a proactive. And I'd like to give a little bit more support over there. And both the sheriff and the city police agree that, yes, they could use some more support at their agencies.
All right, I suppose there'd be questions on Commissioner Rennie.
I make a motion to increase the IT technician from 5/10 to 8/10 FTE.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Wheelock. Discussion. Commissioner Lemkool and then Commissioner Wheelock.
Yeah, in the letter from the sheriff, it was suggested that he work from 10 till 6. Is that allowed in the contract to be able to allow somebody to work those hours? And are you looking at that?
I think we can allow, I didn't actually ask, whether the person could do that, but I think we can do that flexibility. I don't think there's any issues, Jen? Is that? Okay,
Not a biggie.
all right.
Okay.
I guess my staff have typically been pretty flexible, and, usually I work with them, they work with me, so I don't know if there are some issues there or not.
I didn't know if there was going to have to be additional compensation for working after 5 or something, so,
Start time. With you.
okay. Good.
Okay, Commissioner Wheelock.
Don, because of the fact that this position is being filled in, it does have a additional cost of about 15 grand. Will some of that be billed back to the city?
Yeah. Well, my plan right now is still to keep it within the count of the computers. That's where I take all of the technicians' time, and it's pushed out into a support fee there. So my plan right now was still to continue with the existing distribution. Next year, it would actually get put in with all computers distributed across everyone. And I know, the Sheriff's Department this year is looking for an extra 5 computers for command staff. So, that would pick up a share of it, but the plan was actually just to build it into the distribution like I do for all computers at this point.
My thought was that because of the fact it's specifically an IT tech for law enforcement, that law enforcement should be paying for that position.
All right, we could definitely look at that option.
And I understand we're in the middle of the year, so maybe we don't, but I think there's some of that we need to evaluate anyway. We've talked about that before.
Right.
Make sure we're realistic about who's paying for it.
Okay, and my plan for this year was, I do have a person who's part-time, does printer repair and those types, and it wasn't until, last year I put in the same amount this year in the budget into that part-time account. I'm expecting I'm probably going to have an extra $5,000 into that account, and I thought I can, between the training, travel, conferences, I can find the remainder of that within my existing budget to fund this .3 difference.
If I understand what I read in this packet, primarily this person's going to be responsible for the MDTs.
I think so. I mean, I think that's what they'd
And
really like to
I
see.
think they are, a time-consuming, but they're a significant piece of what law enforcement is becoming today.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Commissioner Lathrop.
So I'm confirming that you can do this with your existing budget. You're not asking for an extra 15K.
That's correct. And then for this year, it's the 10,003. The next, I would have to put the 15 into the full year for the budget. So for this year, though, and I did talk to Dean about my idea where to take the money from, and he was fine and said yes, that money would be available within the fund.
And I do agree with Commissioner Wheelock that if the city is getting use of this, they should pay their share.
And, we can definitely go back, and like I said, it would get distributed, so the city's a share like everybody else.
Yeah.
If we want to make sure that this position itself is allocated strictly to sheriff and police and charged to that, we can go back and look.
Administrator Benda.
On that note, we have been talking with the city about our leases, the lease agreements that you'll notice in my report. We had a meeting and we discussed leasing each other's facilities, and the space in the law enforcement center is a part of that. And the sheriff and I have been discussing the central records piece of that. We can also, it's a perfect time to start talking about the IT portion of all this.
Good.
So we can, Chris Forsyth and I are going to put together a lease agreement, and we're going to start working on that contract in the next few weeks, so.
Cool.
We'll look at that.
Any other comments on the motion?
Bless you, Larry.
No comments on the motion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We will now move on to item C under departmental reports, and that's the Property Assessment Clean Energy PACE Program, and this is for immediate approval. And John Syke is going to speak. Introduce yourself.
Good evening, John Syke, Traverse County Planning Director. This is an item follow-up to back in February. We had Andy Levin from Lean and Green, Michigan, presenting on PACE, which is the Property Assessed Clean Energy Program. This is a program that's made possible through a statute that was passed in 2010, allows counties to create PACE districts, which offer a financing tool for county businesses or businesses within the county to fund energy efficiency improvements in their buildings. And I won't go at length to that particular program after we had quite a bit of discussion back in February, but to follow up where we're at least in those, in looking at the program, is we did have back on March 14th, we had a what we call the business forum over at EPI, which is the Environmental Protection Incorporated over on South Airport. They hosted an event where we had different businesses that were interested in the program. We had Andy there to speak about the program, and then actually meeting with some of the business owners that were interested. Commissioner Lemkool was present at that particular forum. We thought it was having 40 people on a Friday morning come out. I thought was a very good show and interest from the community. We also have Brian Johnson from E3 is also present here, who is in the business of assisting businesses with energy efficiency improvements. The program, in terms of if the county wants to proceed with the program, is to establish a creation of a PACE district, which would essentially be encompassing the entire boundaries of the county. How that would work is to establish pass a resolution of intent, which is what we're presenting this evening. There would be a public hearing on April 30th, and then following that public hearing would be final resolution of the adoption of that particular district. That, in essence, puts in the program in play. The actual administration is being handled by Lean and Green Michigan, which is a public-private partnership. The county would be involved in that in terms of approving projects, but the actual work would be done by Lean and Green Michigan along with Miller Canfield. And so far, it's the same program that they've established already in 6 other counties, including Ingham, Huron, Macomb, Saginaw, Washtenaw, and Allen counties. And just to mention, just to back on that business forum, I think it was a good process. Andy, who's been working with a lot of the communities throughout the state of Michigan, thought it was a very unique approach. He said he didn't see that in a lot of the other counties, and thought it was a very good way to really open it up as an opportunity to see what the business community interest is. And I thought it turned out to be pretty good. So tonight we're just requesting a resolution of intent to establish the district and to set the public hearing.
Okay, Commissioner Lemkool.
Yeah, I make the recommendation to approve the resolution of intent to establish a property-assessed clean energy program and calling for a public hearing on April 30th, 2014.
Support. It was seconded by Commissioner Rennie before you jumped in there, Commissioner Wheelock. And discussion, Commissioner Wheelock.
You know, my reservation is still the same as it was before. I do support the concept. I've had a few conversations with companies that I do work with, but they are primarily companies that are involved in energy-saving technology too. My concern is liens on property or special assessments on property that are going to last 20 years when we know that the average property owner is probably going to own that property 5 years. So that's my reservation, because the person that makes the commitment to have the assessment done on the property is most likely not going to own the property when the 20 years is up.
Commissioner Lemkool.
Attending that forum, it was rather interesting because the EPI building showed us some lights that they had taken out of the building that produced, was it 450 watts? 450 watt bulbs, and they replaced them with 50 watt LEDs. Now that's a huge savings. And they can go back, as long as they did it within a year of what we've done, and they could go back and do this for their building and be able to borrow the money as long as they had approval from the mortgage holder to help them pay for that energy efficiency. That's huge. I mean, they're going to be able to pay for that in a very short period of time. I think they said 3 years is what that payoff on that particular piece. So, I really think this is, Charlie has always been talking about economic development. This is a great tool in the toolbox for economic development.
I even like the immediate approval.
So I'm in total support of this. And also I've seen the business people, part of those 40 people there were not just the contractors, they were the people that wanted to be able to do this in their buildings.
All right, Commissioner Lathrop and then Commissioner Rennie.
I'm again in Sonny's court. I'm a little suspicious of it. They're going to borrow money out 20 years. Those light bulbs won't last 20 years. So by the time it's paid for, all the stuff that they've stuck in the buildings is going to be antiquated already. I don't like the county being involved in having to levy and collect taxes on these loans. The idea of it, I don't like. So if we're going to pass this, that doesn't mean we pass it, right? I mean, we're just going to look into it, have a public hearing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's
yeah,
right.
This is a resolution of intent.
Because I'm yet to be convinced that this is a good thing.
Commissioner Rennie.
I think it's a great thing. These are viable companies that can qualify for a loan. Imagine that. We're going to actually help businesses that are viable and help them with their energy, improve our energy consumption locally, if you will, save them some money at the same time. There's no obligation now or long-term to the county that I see in the write-up. I think we should approve it today and get going and get some money flowing in the local economy.
We have to do a public
I
hearing.
understand that, but get it going.
Yeah.
This could help our local economy with an infusion of money.
John, did you have any remarks?
Yeah, in terms of, not every situation is going to involve a 20-year loan. I mean, you're not going to get a 20-year loan for lights. I mean, those are typically the ones where there is the quicker turnaround. But what it does is allow for that business to get the financing from the bank to do those projects that require a longer term. But it's basically the situation is when from those savings, they'll be able to use to pay off that particular loan.
Well, one of the things I'm looking forward to in the public hearing is what's the downside and what risk are we really taking? I agree with Charlie that I want to see businesses grow, but I don't want us to take on responsibility that isn't ours either. So I'm looking forward to the public hearing and seeing how, how can we get hurt? How bad can we get hurt? Is there a downside?
Well, I guess from the standpoint, what the reason that actually the county's involved in is actually a relatively small part of it, and that's using the special assessment district
Option.
concept to extend that loan to go beyond traditional loan terms. And I think when we were talking with Andy Levin, there would be even the possibility of a business could pay that loan directly back to the bank. They do not have to use necessarily this special assessment. It's really almost kind of giving a backing to ensure that the bank will get its money in terms of payoff for that particular project.
Kind of like we're co-signing a loan in a way.
It's more of like a tip.
No, it goes.
It's more like a tip.
The county wouldn't be on
Yeah.
it. It runs with the land. So in essence, when that improvement is made, it's with that building.
Yeah.
And if the business were to leave, it would still require that to be paid off based on whoever owns that particular property.
Commissioner Rennie.
Yeah, in that this is going to be a mortgage through a lending institution.
Right.
It
We're
takes
not
the
making
county
a-
out of the picture. I mean, we're not
Yeah,
gonna
the
be
county does not
obligated.
do the lending
Right,
itself.
but we have to explain to people that the county will not be obligated for any funds here.
Yeah, we're just
I
creating-
understand this program would work. The business would qualify with a lending institution. We're not backing it, we're not guaranteeing it or anything else. Is that correct?
Yeah, all we're doing is
Operating the
authorizing the
special
ability
assessment
to
tool.
create one.
Let's go.
No, create the district. Any other questions? Well, we're looking for immediate approval on this, and as long as the motion maker and second agree with that, we will have a roll call vote, please.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Lemkool,
Yes.
Lathrop,
Yes.
Wheelock,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yep.
Rennie,
Yes?
Inman.
Yes. Motion passes. You get everybody? All right. Good.
Just
Thank
wanted to
you.
mention that we'll have Andy Levin back here on April 30th for that public hearing as well,
All right.
so to answer any additional questions that people
Great.
might have.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
We will now move on to item D under Department Action Reports, and that's the administration. We asked the Administrator Benda to come back with an evaluation process to the board, and you have the floor, Dave Benda.
Okay, it's on page 67 in your packet.
We would also
And
allow the sheriff and whoever representatives to weigh in on this if they'd like to come to the microphone. So,
Okay, I met with John Syke a little while back, before we put this together, and we kept stepping back in the process we really have to start talking about our capital improvements plan before we get too far along with any kind of jail discussion, because first you have to define what your jail is going to have in it. And when you start talking about that, you need to talk about all your other facilities as well, and we have a lot of impacts. If the sheriff is going to move, if we're going to move the jail off the current site, instead of expanding on the current site, the sheriff would like to be with the jail, with law enforcement, and have his whole operation under one roof. And if we were going to do that, then the Woodmere facility is going to be mostly vacant, with just the city in it. I had a discussion with Jared Ottenwest this morning, our city manager in Traverse City, and kind of briefed him on what we were talking about in this circle, and it seems like there's a process that we want to go through, and the way I'm outlining this process is in this memo. We have a current capital improvements plan. We look at basically our sites, and probably 4 primary sites. That would be this campus with the courts and the governmental center, the Woodmere facility, the Front Street facility where Commission on Aging and MSU Extension is, and the Lafreniere site, which has additional room for construction of county buildings if we so choose. So looking at those things, and we're going to take a step back and try and create scenarios that, what if, and you can draw a lot of pictures. I mean, when you start thinking about this site and its needs, you can come up with a lot of different ways of doing things to try and address the needs of this site. What we would like to do is put those together, 3 or more scenarios, bring them to the Board of Commissioners, have them look at them and make comments, and try and whittle it down to as few possibilities as we can, and then take it on the road, get the sheriff's input, get all the judge's input, get the city's input, get everybody's input that we can get, bring it back with those comments, and then open it up for the public to look at. If you want to modify it again, you get another chance to maybe tweak it. Let the public weigh in on those, and then actually make a final decision on, this is our plan. This is what we plan to do with our county facilities and what we plan to do in the future. And then we have a marching orders on how to do it. So that's kind of really the first step in the jail process. In order to figure out how big of a site you need, or whether you can do it on this site, you got to decide what's going to be inside the building.
And if I may, before we actually go through that whole thing, that whole scenario, it seems to me that the first step is to go to the National Institute of Corrections, have your team go through the educational process, go through the dynamics of what you have going on in Grand Traverse County. I know you guys set up, kind of a strategic team to go over your particular situation along with getting the general training. They come here and do an assessment, and then they probably prepare a report for us. And then we go through this process as you're indicating, and at some point in time we would weigh in on if we're going to not have it at this campus, we would weigh in on some kind of siting committee involving the public.
Correct.
So would you suggest that your memo include those issues on the first dealing with the National Institute of Corrections in Boulder, Colorado, then you would go to item 1 on page 68, and then you go through that process?
No, I'm thinking that we can start talking about the
Or would
capital.
you go through all this first before you go to the Institute of
You're
Corrections?
looking for something to do now, while we're going forward in the process. Before the NIC arrives here in, say, June, we can start working on our capital improvements process. We can start looking at that plan again, looking at, do we want, the city occupies the second floor of this building and the part of the first floor, and they occupy part of Woodmere, and we occupy their building, or part of their building on Front Street, and what's the best fit for all this?
The only question I would have on that is, how would you even start the discussion without knowing or going through the process at National Institute of Corrections and having them come in and do the assessment first, react to their assessment, then you can, and you guys come back from that training process, then you come back and say, this is the size of the facility we need. This is the acreage that we need. We need sewer and water. We need it so many miles within the city limits. We need this, we need that. And then you go through, okay, what's possible? It seems to me you have to have that first. I mean, that's the way I view it, and other people would have different viewpoints, but it seems to me you would have to go through the Institute of Corrections, the National Institute of Corrections, and have them come here to do the assessment, and then have a consensus of what the recommendation is. Then you go through, okay, what's not possible? Yes? Yes? No?
I'm not just going to disagree with you, Larry. I think that's correct. But if you're looking to do something now, because, we aren't going to see the NIC team until June, we're not going to get the report until later, I don't know when, and we're not going until mid-August to Colorado.
I just didn't want to have us spend staff time and our time and other time slammed into trying to get this thing done before you guys go out to Colorado or before they come in for the assessment, when really we need to react to the facts that you guys generate through going there and coming back and having doing the assessment. It seems to me that you might be spinning wheels on a lot of other factors that may not even play into what we really need. So why go through that process? I mean, I'm just talking as sort of an outsider looking at it and saying, Well,
there's two paths. You just outlined two paths.
Which way
wait till
do you wanna go?
they get here, or don't wait. Let's hurry to get something else done now.
Sonny's going to pop out.
And I know Sonny's about to jump off the chair, grab the microphone like Superman, and they will be doing it. So Commissioner Wheelock.
All right. Well, I guess the first thing that I have to do is acknowledge what we did 10 years ago. We went through this process 10 years ago. We came up with a short-term plan and a long-term plan. The long-term plan identified that we needed, at that time, they were identifying a 250-bed jail. 250 to 300-bed jail. I'll flat tell you, I asked for a preliminary meeting of the CIP committee, and they met this morning. And primarily what we did is we pulled out what we already have. We have drawings from Dennis Lieber, who was a consultant from NIC. They helped us design pods on the existing jail. And we also have site plans that we have developed over the years for the campus on Lafreniere. What I'm saying we can get started on right now, and I think, if I can speak for Dave in this recommendation, we have a lot of things that we can do before we get to bricks and mortar to decide about the jail, where it goes, or anything else. If the sheriff, we need to make the decision if the sheriff is going to separate from the city police. Okay, that's a meeting that we have with the city manager and the mayor and representatives from the city commission. I'm not sure who all is involved in that discussion, but that needs to happen very preliminarily.
Well, let me ask you a question on that, if I could.
Okay.
If I could, just for a second.
Sure.
Let's assume that when you go through the National Institute of Corrections and they do the assessment coming back, okay, there's really going to be two options. One is to go with the pods kicked out, the 2 extra pods, or you can create a second floor if you want. You can go for the 250-bed pods, or you can go up for another. You can actually have a 100-bed pod on the bottom and a 100-bed pod on the top part. So you're going to have that option, or you're going to have an option to leave the campus and go somewhere else. And then the somewhere else means bringing the sheriff's department with them. Now, if those are let's lay it on the table. Those are your two options. Now, if the option to stay on campus, because we're going to be closer to courts, we don't really need to sit down and have a discussion with the city police until we know whether we're going to leave this campus or not.
Except the sheriff has already told you he wants his law enforcement back with his corrections department. I believe that's the way I understand it. Is that correct?
Yeah, and he's
so
making that recommendation.
My point is there's a lot of things, preliminary stuff that we can do. We can have the discussion about that. If the sheriff is committed that he needs law enforcement to be back with his corrections division, then it may or may not be able to fit here, or maybe we have to build a law enforcement wing on the building if we're going to put it here too. But one way or the other, if we're going to have the separation, we need to have those preliminary discussions with the city that we're even considering that this is a possibility. That's going to take some time. Those discussions can be had now. We have 4 sites that we truly have to talk about in this jail situation. We have to talk about the Front Street building. As most of you will remember, that building housed the city police department and some of the city administration prior to the city police being combined with the sheriff's department in what is now the 600 section? The additional pod section inside the jail. When that law enforcement agreement was put together, and the city police and the sheriff's department moved in together, at that time was within the jail. Then the vacant building on Front Street, the county started occupying that building with Commission on Aging and the MSU Extension. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, if I remember right, MSU Extension was at the corner of 14th and Union, or 14th and Cass, and I really can't remember where Commission on Aging was. I was trying to think about it this afternoon. I can't remember where Commission on Aging was prior to that. But the fact is, we have to start with some of these preliminary discussions, and then we have to look at 4 separate parcels of property. Anything we do with the jail affects 4 properties: the Front Street facility, the Woodmere facility. Now, if the sheriff vacates the Woodmere facility, the city police needs a home. Now, they could stay there, but they don't occupy about about 25% of that building
Yeah.
that the city police operates? They could actually move back into the Front Street building with the city police department and have twice the square footage that they have at our Woodmere facility. So maybe that's what they would like to do, if in fact we're going to make the split between the city police and the sheriff's department. Once we decide what we do with Woodmere, now if we no longer occupy that building for law enforcement purposes, then do we want to market that building? You know, I think the appraisal on that building came back at $3.5 million. You know, was the appraisal on that piece of property in that building? You know, the appraisal on the Front Street building's like $570,000. So, you know, how are we best serving our community with that? Anything we do with this campus, we have to look at the entire campus, not just the 2 pods. Or you know, we can add the 2 pods into that parking lot. We no longer have any parking in between the historic court building and the district court building. Right. That parking all went away with the 2 pods. Right. And we already know what the parking situation is on this campus. But more importantly, at least in my mind, is the fact that the core infrastructure of the existing jail is deficient.
That's the issue.
You know, that's the problem. So realistically, having discussions about putting the pods on the existing infrastructure, unless you're going to rebuild the core portion of that building and expand the kitchen and the laundry facilities and all of the stuff that's in there, then it's foolish to even have the discussion about putting the pods on that building.
Well,
we will get to there, and that discussion will be had with the NIC people. But we've already had that discussion with the NIC people. We have their recommendations that were done 10 years ago. The other thing is to look at the Lafreniere property, and, you know, that property was, I think, what did we look at in the site plan? Was there 5 different buildings on the site plan originally? You know, when we originally looked at that property, the original preliminary site plan showed 5 separate buildings on that property. You know, we've put a health department building there. It's about the size of the smallest building that was originally sited on that property. So, you know, the CIP portion involves looking at all 4 of these properties, and I believe we can start that preliminary information, or that preliminary discussion first. You know, getting on toward that, if we read David's recommendation, he would suggest that the board appoint someone to accompany him with those meetings, and I would ask that the board appoint me to do that. I think I can bring the history of how we got to where we are, and I think that's going to be beneficial in having the discussion.
Is that the Institute of Corrections meeting you're talking about?
No, these preliminary meetings with the stakeholders to talk about the city police and all of those kind of things. Eventually, we will get to the NIC thing. I think when the NIC will come here in June or July, and a team from here will go there in August. You know, obviously, I would hope to be able to do that also. But the fact is, for right now, I think we need to have some preliminary discussions. And unfortunately, you know, or maybe it's fortunately, when we start having discussions about how the law enforcement agreement came in place and how we ended up with the 2 police departments together and how we have supposedly have lease agreements for the 2 pieces of property, which were never finished and never signed.
Conveyances, right.
You know, as far as the conveyance of the properties, never happened because none of the boards were happy at the time. But the problem is there is no one involved today, from the city manager, the mayor, the county administrator, the sheriff, that were involved in those discussions at the time. So somebody's going to have to be able to bring them the history of how we got here.
Yeah. Okay, we had Commissioner Running and Commissioner Lemko.
I guess my point is, I can't see how we would try to improve this current jail. It's an antique design, it's very labor intensive, it's not a good plan long term. We can help pay for this new jail by an enhanced facility that is less labor intensive. So I think the question should be, we are moving, and that this jail probably isn't worth enlarging, if you will. If you want to keep it as is and bore it out, that's a whole different question.
Okay. Commissioner Lemko?
I got numerous questions. One is, where does the Building Authority Committee come into this, play into this?
If you make a decision to build something, they will
Then
implement that.
then they come in
You say-
after we've made the decision, then they come in to be able to do that. Okay.
Right.
They make the
You
land
decide
payments.
what
They
kind
make
of
the bond
building you
payments.
want,
Right.
and you tell them give them as much detail as you want to give them about what kind of building you want, and then tell them, go build that building for us.
So that, so we as commissioners don't build that building, the Building Authority does build that building once our process has gone through.
I think we have to footnote that the presentation of, the architectural design of the jail and the cost and the bidding and everything still lies within our authority.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
circling back.
Still has to come back here.
Yes.
Right. The other thing is that the appointment of the person, does it have to be a board appointment, or can it be the chairman's appointment?
However the board wants to handle it.
do it
So,
with the board's approval.
if that's fine with everybody, I would like to appoint Sonny as the representative for this committee, and with your blessings.
I'm just wondering if we need another commissioner as well, instead of one.
Do we have any?
Do we have a recommendation for the?
Is that a
I do-
motion, or what is that?
What we were suggesting, John and I had talked about this, we were suggesting that we hire a local architect to help us through the process of, if we have space questions, if we, somebody who knows how to draw on a piece of paper, what we're envisioning here, and have some charrettes, I guess they call them. And I've already talked to the city manager about being involved in that process, and any commissioners, or all commissioners, but have it not as a commissioner meeting, but more of a, a working session where we sit down and we start talking about each of these buildings and start throwing out ideas about what these scenarios could look like. What if this moves over here and that moves over there? What if we built a two-story structure in the middle of here? And what if we,
Well,
did a
we've got
parking
four.
deck or acquired that property over there? I mean, that's what we're asking for before we get to the Board of Commissioners with the final scenarios.
Technically, if we have 4, we have to post it and consider it, an official.
Well, we'll post the meetings anyway.
So,
Yeah.
Commissioner Max Bauer.
Whether you appoint me or not, I'm going to go to these meetings.
And that's fine.
I am chair of Public Health and Safety. I'm going to probably be the hardest to sell. This is one time where I'm really going to embrace the glacial speed of government. I really am. I do not want to go down the septic treatment facility road where we built this huge septic plant for capacity that we are probably not going to see in our lifetime. I want to do this methodically. I want to have sound reasoning behind it. If it takes longer, it takes longer. But I do intend to be very much involved.
So I will make appointment of Sonny Wheelock and Chris Maxbauer to that committee.
Okay, all right,
Everybody's happy with that?
well, technically, if according to our board rules, the chairman makes a recommendation, and then it's consented by the board.
Do you want to bring this back on the next agenda item?
It's on the agenda already,
Okay.
so it's a matter of doing the business.
Okay.
So, does someone like to make a motion for the chairman's
I will
recommendation?
make that motion.
Right. Is there a second? All right, second by Lathrop. So the motion is to have Commissioner Wheelock and Commissioner Max Bauer as the representatives of the board to serve on this, what would you call it, committee, the CIP committee?
Yeah.
All right, okay.
Sure.
Discussion? Hearing none, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, do we need a motion to tell Dave to go ahead with this plan? Or does this motion do that?
That's different.
Yeah,
This does it?
this is to establish that, the members of the CIP plan.
No,
Then-
we're probably going to come back, I'm going to talk with probably a local architect to see if he can help us and try to get a price from him. See
So
if it-
let's just-
I'm assuming it's not going to cost a lot, it's just going to be,
This just gives the two people on the CIP.
Right, that's all.
Later on, you're going to come back with a plan we're going to vote on.
with the, I
Okay.
think we're going to get an architect involved to
Yeah.
help us sketch out our,
Right.
our proposals and then
Cool.
bring them to the board
But-
so they can react to them and
right.
start the process.
But, I want to look at many, many options.
You'll be there.
All right.
And we will.
Okay. Motion on the floor to place Commissioner Max Bauer, Commissioner Wheelock on the CIP committee representing the Board of Commissioners. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes.
So,
Dave, quick question before I go to Commissioner Lempool. We had, if I was just thinking correctly, the board directed you to come back to RMA to give us what you saw as the process that we should be going through in terms of the evaluation and of how we should proceed with looking at a new facility or our bed space needs. And you've cited 1 through 7. Do you want us to consent to that, or do you want to come back with all these architectural drawings first and all this other stuff, and then come back, or do you want the
No.
CIP committee to come back with a recommendation?
I think the CIP committee can work with me, and we'll start this charrette process.
Okay.
We'll come back to you if we need to for approval to get an architect to help us out.
Okay.
Hopefully it won't cost that much, but, and then once we get that, as far as taking a vote on this is an information-only thing.
All right.
If you vote on it, then I have to follow it word for word.
Okay.
And I don't want to do that.
Right.
I'd rather we make this fluid and be flexible and
I just want to make sure you
add
weren't
people if we need
expecting,
to. And
I just want to make sure you weren't expecting some kind of direction from the board tonight on that.
no, I just I'm hearing consensus. This sounds like a
Yep.
reasonable process to you, and
All right.
we'll
Commissioner
start working
Lempool.
on it.
yeah, a couple of other things. First of all, I would be adamantly opposed to splitting the city and sheriff at this point, unless I can see any other reason. I'd have to be showing that. I think the public, some of the comments out there that we're looking at doing that, I think we have to clarify that that's not our intent at this point. All we're doing is, asking the questions as to whether or not it's more feasible, it works better, or doesn't. I think right now it's been working very, very well for our community, for all the taxpayers. And so I would hope that people won't get the wrong idea that, hey, we're splitting them up and we're going to get rid of the city and we're going to go do our own way. That's not the intent of this group that I know of at this point. The other thing is I would suggest that there's one other site that we have not looked at, either for jail or parking lot, and that is the school building across the street.
That's right.
And, that, whether or not that could be considered a jail with a tunnel coming back to the, we've had discussion or had a letter from the judges saying, we want the jail near where we're at. So, if you start to look at, if you're going to be moving your jail, do you move your courts also? And you're going to get a lot of pushback on that from the city because they're going to want the people to be living or working inside the city. So, I think there's a lot of issues here that have to be discussed long before we start to build to even get to the point where we're going to build a jail.
Administrator Benda.
Yeah, and I think Herb makes an excellent point that I've already approached the city manager, and we've talked with the mayor and the city manager together at a different meeting. We want to include them in this process. This is, we are, I guess we're approaching this in a joint way that they have needs as well, and we want to make sure we get their needs addressed as well. We're looking at this as both governments looking out for the taxpayers' interests and trying to get the right things done for the future.
Okay. Commissioner Lathrop.
I'm glad you said that, Herb, because there are people out there that could take what we say tonight and run with it. We're saying this and we're saying that. We're just looking at it.
Right.
Okay? Secondly, I'm glad you brought up that about the building across the street. We haven't mentioned that until just now, and that could be a real viable opportunity.
Not for jail.
I don't think it'd be a jail.
That wouldn't make a jail. Kind of weird.
It's
We'd have to bolt
loaded with asbestos,
Yeah.
just so you know.
Oh, that's, you got a guy here that can cure that.
Commissioner Rennie.
Go ahead, I'm fine.
I guess the comment that I would make is, when we were talking this morning about the 4 sites that we have to look at, when we talked about this campus as a whole, we specifically actually talked about the building across the street. So,
Good.
it is
And the Park
part of,
Place.
it is part of part of the campus overview as far as the site plan of this campus.
Commissioner Rennie.
Yeah, sorry. I had a question with respect to the courts, and you mentioned the judges want the jail close to the courts. You know, at some point in time, we have to look at where we are today, and if you have to take the judge out to see 10 or 20 people at a jail, that's better than transporting 10 or 20 people down to see the judge. And I think it's about time someone starts talking to judges and our courts about cooperating and what the long-term goals of this county are with respect to who's paying the bills.
Well, they do quite a bit of video arraignment right now and things like that. I think,
It's open.
and a new jail would have probably a courtroom inside of
I
it
mean, I
for
would think
people
you
that we
put
don't
that
want to take
facility
out.
as part of your facility. of
Most
course.
modern-day
And the
jails have
prosecutor-
have a miniature courtroom.
So I don't know why
built
the
into
courts
them.
have such an impact on it with respect to a judge wanting the jail close to the courthouse.
Well, they need a lockup to have them so that they can get to the inmates, so the inmates can get to the courts quickly.
So why not take the judge to the inmate?
That was my thought.
I think that those
Well, I mean,
are
I'm
easily
asking.
solved
Most
issues,
modern
but
jails do
we
have
have to go
some
through the
courtroom
process with the
facility,
judges. And that's part of the process. I mean, part of the process I outlined was, we bring you some ideas, you kind of say, okay, here's our 3 options, or 5 options, or whatever, and then we go to the judges, and we go to the city, and we go to, and get their formal input, and then bring it back to you with comments, and then go out to the public.
I think
It's a-
that's part's great, but a lot of times we hear, the judges don't want it, forget it. And I don't think that's what it should be. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, okay.
We're hearing the same thing from our sheriff,
Where is he?
that he wants his office next to the jail. So, it's not just the judges that are asking for different things.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, I
The
know.
sheriff should be with the jail. That makes all the sense in the world, in my opinion.
It's
As
not
far
now,
as the
it's-
judges go, that's a whole different thing.
And the other thing, if we could have the CIP committee do, take a look at how other counties in our state have handled jail expansion. I think we could tee off on some of their ideas and how they did it. Now, Ottawa County is a great example if you've got money. If you've got money, because they're one of the more wealthiest counties in the state.
So is Cook County, Chicago.
I'm just talking about the state of Michigan. But what they did is they decided to create, to take the old antiquated jail within downtown, what's the city down there in Ottawa?
Grand Haven.
Grand Haven. And they decided to go, 10 miles out or whatever, and they actually acquired a huge, what they call, state-of-the-art criminal justice campus. They brought a state-of-the-art jail there, they got the sheriff's department there, they got probation parole there, they have all 3 courts there, and they actually ended up building the new administration office over there at the same campus plaza. And everything is all there, all in one campus now. It's a criminal justice center along with the main administration building.
As well.
And they ended up doing something different with the older building they were in Grand Haven. But I've been to the facility and it's just incredible. And if you want something to drive down to, it takes a couple hours to go down to and see how they design and how that all flows and how it all works together. That's a great county to go down there and take a look at.
That's a good point, Larry.
Commissioner Lemko.
I also might want to remind you that we've been through a pretty heavy budget crunch.
I'm just saying, if you have money.
Yeah. That we may not be able to afford that kind of facility within our budgets. And so we have to also be cognizant of the fact that, we've told the community that we're really hurting on our budget. We don't know for sure if we're out of that. So we have to be very cautious that we may not be able to afford an off-campus jail. We may only be able to do a pod here on our current site in order to meet the current needs.
Okay, this is all good discussion. You can see it's kind of a lot of ideas, let's just say
Big
that.
picture.
Okay, is there anything else to report on that item?
Big picture's good.
All right, so we've taken action to have a couple commissioners sit on the CIP committee, and if we can involve the sheriff and his office and the courts and the city and make it comprehensive, that would be great, at least at the initial part, along with, I would suggest the prosecutor's office, because, he's sitting he's on the same campus, he's sitting in a modular home that's just, it doesn't have any much life left in it, and they're slam-packed. So, if we're going to examine the campus here, we need to look at the needs of the prosecutor as well.
You can have
Okay.
a lower level here.
All right.
What's really, what was
No, actually,
really,
it's not in a bad building, but it's not big enough.
yeah,
and there's
what was real interesting was to look at the site plan of this campus and see how big the footprint of the jail is in the center of this campus.
It's huge.
It's huge.
Okay.
It's twice the size of this building and the historic courthouse put together.
Right.
You know, we don't realize how big it is, but when you look at an aerial footprint, you know, I'm sure that the square footage of the jail is larger than the square footage or the footprint of this building and the historic courthouse put together.
Yeah. And I think before we leave the conversation, we have to, for those of us that have been around for a while, we have made a significant investment in this campus with this governmental center, with the jail expansion, with the renovation of the historic courthouse, with the new
Hall of Justice.
district court, Hall of Justice, and combining those two churches. And that was really an innovative thing that we did in terms of using those two churches and by acquiring them and doing the public process in the community for the acceptance of the expansion of that and putting a building in between the two of them that has really worked well. So we have to understand we've made a significant investment in this campus, which is going to weigh heavily on what we do. So, all right, moving on. We have next, item D, administration, jail evaluation. Next is administrator's report.
Oh, there's, I don't know how many pages I got this week, but this month, but 9 pages this month. I'm just going to touch on a couple things. We already talked about the fact that the board chair and I met with the mayor and city manager about housing issues. We at the same meeting, we talked about the Front Street and Woodmere issues, and we came to the agreement that we were going to do lease agreements rather than try to do the conveyances where they owned a piece of our building and we owned a piece of their building, and it was really messy. We decided that we'd just draw up lease agreements that would be roughly the same money that we're working with right now, and we just, give ourselves a long time out clause, couple years out clause on each thing, and they seemed to be agreeable to that. I don't know if the whole city commission would be, but this mayor and the city manager said it sounded reasonable. We also talked about some housing issues, and John Syke and myself and Jared Ottenwes and Russ Soyring, sorry, met, and we started talking about the things that we had talked about, and the whole idea is to kind of find an umbrella, put some concepts together for an umbrella organization to make sure we can put together some incentives for housing, especially affordable and workforce housing, not only in the city but close to the city, because that is where our need is, and that's where the market is demanding higher priced. So at any rate, we're going to talk about some different concepts about how we could put that together and
Dave,
bring
if I
something
might,
to the board. And
Also, Mayor Estes wanted to know whether or not we would be interested in appointing somebody to the Traverse City Housing Committee. Instead of being all city residents, it could include a county resident on that Traverse City Housing Commission. So there's been a lot of changes coming, and there's a great active board, and so we also are talking about whether or not we should have that appointment, and so we're working toward on that.
Good idea.
And the senior renovation project, if you didn't pick that up, the request went to the City Commission on March 17th to get the architectural services of Cornwell Architects for the renovation project, so they're moving forward with that. Over on page 2, I wanted to tell you that the audit's been completed. At least our staff's work on the audit has been completed finally, and I get to use Dean again, which is
On that, Garfield Township just gave a check back to $18,000 for what, Chris? What company got the Garfield for their review? One of the companies just received a check for $18,000. 5% would go to Garfield Township. The rest of that would go back to other taxing jurisdictions that we will have to reimburse.
I can't remember.
They pay off their TIF, is that the?
No, this is from, the company went through a board review for the state of Michigan, and they gave them this kind of an assessment. So they wrote a check for $18,000. They'll be coming back to all taxing authorities to give back some of that money. So, and I don't know what our share would be on that, but that's college, Beta, all the taxing jurisdictions will have to give money back.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was Hillshire Brands.
Oh, okay. You noted that we got a $25,000 grant from the Grand Traverse Band for to continue the beach monitoring program that was eliminated by the state of Michigan this year. We had a grant that allowed us to every day put out the coliform levels and make sure our beaches were safe. We're going to be able to continue that this year, and hopefully next year the state will reinstitute that program. That's about it. I don't have a lot else to talk about.
Any other questions on the administrator's report? Well, we appreciate this because I continue to get reminded that the townships I represent, this is an excellent report to help supplement our reports when we go to the townships and the cities and the villages and everything. So we appreciate you doing this.
I thought Bob's information there about how busy his office has been.
The statistical analysis I thought was interesting.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Thanks for supplying that to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very interesting. Okay, we will now move on to unfinished business. We set up an ad hoc committee, as you know, myself, Commissioner Wheelock, and Commissioner Thomas. We had public comment from Commissioner Rennie.
I thought it was Lemcool.
That's what I thought.
Lemcool, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, you're correct. It was Commissioner Lemcool, myself, and Wheelock. We had public comment from Commissioner Rennie and Commissioner Maxbauer during the meeting, however, they weren't there at the same time. And we talked about it, and what our intent was, we could have went either way. We could have made it very restrictive to just the assignments that the board has given you along with your MAC and ACO conferences, and those would be considered training or any other training things that the board approves you to go to, as well as your township and village meetings, those kinds of things, and just cut it from there. Or the other, the more we got into the discussion and the feedback from Commissioner Rennie and Commissioner Maxbauer, we felt that we should clarify what really isn't not involved in the per diem policy, and then leave the discretion to the individual commissioner if they feel it's necessary for them to be at a particular meeting, and it would have to be a meeting, that they would be allowed to go to that meeting and get a per diem, and it shouldn't be the duties of the audit committee or the claims and accounts committee to question, why he or she went there. If there's a hot issue, for example, at your township level, you should be there. Even if it's at, a zoning or a planning meeting. If it's at Parks and Rec and there's a contentious issue you think you should be there, you should go there if you think you should go there and get a per diem. So we really wanted to come back with something that was flexible to the point where if a commissioner felt that along with their normal assignments and another meeting that they felt that they should go to, either for educational purposes or for the need of having a commissioner there, that they should get a per diem, and that we should not be in a position of questioning those at the level of the audit committee. And we wanted to also clarify, so there would be, really we would place the judgment on the commissioner. The other thing is we wanted to clarify that ceremonial events and ribbon cutting events would be part of your salary. And I agree with the comments in the paper from Commissioner Maxbauer, which I was also questioned by the paper, that we need to also clarify, and it's not in here, but we need to add to it that, if you have a meeting with a constituent that wants to meet you for lunch or meet with you, somewhere, or an elected official or a township supervisor that wants to meet with you privately on an issue, that would not be considered a per diem. It would have to be, a bona fide meeting. So, but I'll let Commissioner Max Bauer expand on her thoughts that was quoted in the paper, which I believe
More
I
than
agree
happy
with.
to.
Yeah. Commissioner Max Bauer.
Yeah, I just think that we have a salary, and that salary should include, as part of our job, talking with our constituents. I don't think that should count as a per diem. I think that's a no-brainer. I don't think that every time I go have coffee with Doug Luciani and talk about the chamber, I don't think that should be, I think that's part of the job. That's what we get paid an annual salary for. So those really is what my comments were in the paper, and I really think that should be spelled out.
Okay, and I agree that we should add that into the recommendation memo. Otherwise, the recommendation coming back from the committee was, let's clarify that ribbon cutting ceremonies, ceremonial events, as you would call them, the raising of the flags and those kinds of things, meetings with constituents, meetings with community leaders or other elected officials one-on-one, those are not per diem. But if you go to an actual assigned meeting, training meeting, or if you feel it's necessary that, for example, you go to another meeting, I'll give you an example. Acme Township was heavily involved in the septic treatment plant. They wanted me at those meetings, and they wanted to talk about it at the Acme Township Board meeting. So then I went back to the chairman and said, the chairman back then and said, is it okay that I go to the Board of Public Works meeting? And they said yes. So I added that as per diem. That was the only one that I had ever charged for that was outside of my meetings, but I thought those were important meetings for me to go to. Others might have other similar situations. So we wanted the policy to not be so restrictive that if you actually, go to those meetings, you drive over there, you spend time away from your family and everything else, and you spend those evenings in those meetings and getting involved in those meetings, that's really, you should get paid a per diem for that. And we would entrust your judgment to say, yes, that qualified per diem, and there would be, we don't want, and again, get that discretion thing out of that audit committee, that claims and accounts committee, and just so as we all have a clear understanding that, the 4 general things that don't qualify, and we would just be incumbent upon you to say, yes, I went to this meeting, it was important to me, I don't need to come back and explain to the board why, I'm going to put it down as per diem and it'll get paid. So that's the recommendation, and along with, that came in the packet, we would like to, as chairman, add, along with ribbon cutting ceremonies and community events, we add meetings with constituents and meetings with community leaders and elected officials one-on-one. They would be defined within your salary. So as the chairman with a little bit of discretion, I think that is the recommendation that we're coming to the board with on this policy, and now we just need to discuss it to see if you have a comfort level with it. So I guess we'd call in Commissioner Thomas. Do you have a comment, or are you just raising your hand?
I certainly like this better than the way it was.
Yes.
And now there is one thing that, and I see you put it in here, and I hope everybody follows it, and that is that you turn them in every month. Because if they drag out and you come in after 2 or 3 months, it makes it tougher for the finance department to keep track of all of that. And they have to keep more records, and it's a lot harder for the audit committee because, you have to remember back 3 months. And myself, I don't think it's restrictive enough. I'd rather see it a little more restrictive, but I'll live by whatever you guys want to go along with. But I think it should be more specific what we can go to.
Okay, Commissioner Lundquist.
Yeah, I agree and disagree with Chris's thing about the per diems as far as meeting with constituents. But as far as meeting with elected representatives, I really think that that's one of those things that we need to encourage more of.
We're just talking about one-on-one, not like the board meeting with the.
I'm talking about, like last Friday.
That would be a per diem.
That should be a per diem.
Yeah, because it's a board meeting.
So, but when you start saying you're not going to pay a per diem for meeting with elected officials.
One-on-one.
Well, but sometimes you're it's just one of those things. You're doing the business of the county, and you're trying to make sure they understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And we need to encourage more of that. When we talked about whether or not we would eliminate per diems, everybody talked about, well, that would keep us from wanting to go to some of those meetings. So all of a sudden, if you start kicking those out, you're going to say to the elected officials, it's not important for you to meet with elected officials talking about county issues.
I think what we're saying is that should be part of your salary.
Well,
But
but I'm just saying it's the same argument.
yeah, we normally meet with our state rep and our senator, and we actually call a Board of Commissioners meeting along with department heads. That would be a per diem item.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying is that I'm concerned about that piece of it, that you're going to tell the commissioners that are elected in the future that it's not important for you to sit down with somebody one-to-one and talk about county issues.
I'd want to charge double if it was with the president.
Yeah, but anyway, I just don't agree with that part of it.
All right, okay. Any other comments? Commissioner Rennie?
I have a couple. First one is County Commissioners A, per diem, page 70. County Commissioners are eligible for per diem for meetings, seminars, conferences, and tours of an informational or educational nature. What does that mean? How do we interpret that?
I guess I would interpret that as kind of the flexibility that we're trying to build into the discussion here, and that is if there's something going on, for example, at Parks and Rec, that you think you should be there, and you're not assigned to Parks and Rec, and you go there for either educational purposes or for understanding what's going on so you can properly deal with it at the board level because it's a hot issue, then you should be able to pay a per diem. So, and I think Commissioner Maxbauer brought up a good point in her public comment to the committee, that all of us aren't assigned to all the committees, obviously, and some of us have no idea what other committees, boards and commissions do or decisions or whatever. And each of us go through an orientation program when you first come on. Those are all per diem, but there'll be times where you'll want to go to a library board or some other kind of board. You know, we've had contentious issues with the library board, and, you know, maybe those are meetings that, you know, some of us would have interest in attending. That should maybe be a per diem. So if you feel, this is the whole point of the thing is, if you feel you should, that this is necessary for you to attend a meeting, and it's county related, and maybe you're not assigned to the meeting, and if you go, you should get a per diem. Commissioner Maxbauer.
What I said in my public comment was, we appoint board members. We appoint Tattle Board members. We appoint Airport Commission members. We appoint to boards. And how do you know who you want to appoint if you don't go to a board meeting and see what they do and or how they do it? You know, so I just wanted to point out that maybe once a year, a commissioner might like to go to an Airport Commission meeting and see what the Airport Commission's responsibilities are and hear a board meeting so that they can make a judgment when applicants come in and wish to be appointed to that board. That was my point.
So,
Commissioner Lathrop.
Yeah, well, recently, the State Parks Association had a meeting where several of us commissioners went to it. It was a good meeting. Charlie was there, and you were, Christine. That would be informational, right?
Right.
I would imagine that meeting is reimbursable
Yeah,
under this.
that should be a per diem.
Yeah. And so we get to choose that.
Yes.
And we don't have to ask permission.
No.
This is kind of the honor system.
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Lemko and then Commissioner Rennie.
you know, but on the same thing could be told when you're meeting with an elected officials, that's educational and informational.
Well,
And so, you know, you're leaving it wide open when you start saying you're not going to pay a per diem for an elected official. You know, I had the opportunity to meet with Senator Levin when he was here. Very beneficial for Dave and I to be able to meet with him, and I did submit a per diem for that. And I felt it was very important that we do that because we're asking them for services for our constituents.
So is everybody comfortable in
I mean,
allowing meetings with elected
constituents,
officials?
I'm comfortable with that. I just have a problem trying to weed out that you can't meet and don't get a per diem on certain situations You know, if I'm going to have coffee with Wayne Schmidt or Howard Walker or somebody, no, I'm not going to submit a per diem. That's not what you're after. But when you have a specific meeting and you're asking for certain information for the taxpayers of Grand Traverse County, you may want to submit a per diem on that.
Oh, and I think that's what we're trying to say, is if it's a legitimate meeting and you're going to go to the meeting, you're invited to the meeting, you get a per diem. But if you're going to have a cup of coffee with Senator Walker or Representative Schmidt, then that's not a per diem.
I agree.
Okay, well, either with his constituents. So it has to be like a legitimate meeting. All right. And that's fine for an elected official. Any other comments or questions on the policy? Yes, Commissioner.
Getting back to you,
Ready.
then I assume that this is going to be left to the discretion of each individual commissioner going
Yes.
forward. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we are elected.
Yes.
We are not delegates. We're trustees. We're given the authority to make these decisions.
Yes.
I don't understand why all this stuff's been running around the community about this sort of thing.
And that's why we need to really clean this thing up.
And I don't know, A3 does seem rather subjective. I don't know what Mr. Cooney might think of that, but that is their interpretation. If you're going to leave that to the commissioners to make this decision, you should state it clearly.
Yeah.
And let's be done with it.
But we want to also state that, there is no per diems for ribbon cutting, ceremony events, or meeting with constituents, or just one-on-one meetings with,
Well, I think
if they have to
that
be
has now been
elected
made clear here from what I see.
officials. Well, we want to add that in here.
Okay, but I'm
Yeah.
talking about the other aspects that were added, the yellow portions. Talked about turning it in monthly, all this kind of stuff. This is what we should be doing.
Well, it's in there that you'll turn it in every month.
I see that,
But it
but
didn't
it
used
should
to.
be.
It didn't used to be.
No, it's been 6 months. You got to get it in within 6 months.
Now we're saying 1 month. Every month has to be
At the
in.
end of every month.
So under item A, per diem, when we say not allowed, but it's part of your salary for ceremony events, ribbon cuttings, grand openings.
Can I talk about the every month thing?
Okay. You mean the submission of
Yeah.
per diems? Okay.
And I say this because I have no problem submitting every month.
It's just going to be for the following month.
I have no problem with that portion of it. But sometimes I would like to be paid in the next tax year. I mean, it comes out of the same fund.
No, it doesn't.
You submit your, at least I always
'cause
submit
Dean
my
always-
per diems the week after the Board of Commissioners meeting.
Yep.
So they don't get paid until into the following month anyway.
That's the way to do it.
So I always submit mine at the end of the week.
Yeah, Dean always tries to
If it's more
remind
than
us
30
that
days
we
old,
get it
it's
in.
not going to be approved.
That's a
In the future. Right
Well, we
now,
gotta
it's,
say-
right now, it's 6 months.
It's 6 months now, but
Yeah, but you got to understand, you finish the month, and then you write it all up, and then you submit it during the following month. It's not at the end of that month, it's the following month.
No, it's the end of that month.
No, not at the end of the month, because you're not done filling the report out yet. And claims hasn't met.
What?
Yes, if you're in the month of March, and you're,
At the end of March, I fill mine out for March.
you fill it out, okay, but it doesn't come to claims until April.
Oh, no,
That's
yeah, don't hit claims, but
Yeah.
I'm just telling when you turn it in.
But you should be able to turn it in at any, the first claims or the second claims in the month of April. That's what I'm saying.
Well, that's within 30 days.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Been
fine.
30 days.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
So,
fine.
any
That's
other?
fine, but I've seen them come in dragging 2-3 months late.
Right.
and that's not going to be allowed with
That's
this.
too hard to follow.
So the only question, based on our discussion so far, I think, is just item 1A, where it's yellowed out, we need to add, it says other special events, meeting with constituents, and just leave it as that.
Just leave it with that.
Yeah, and, I just want to give you an example. And it's always been one of those gray areas that Sonny and I have always talked about, and we've always kind of flipped a coin, like, should we or should we? It's like when we go to the Twin Lakes dinner, okay? We're invited, it's an actual meeting, it's informative, you actually, have time with other elected officials, and you get to see what all the progress that all the other communities, all the other townships and cities and villages are doing and how they did it, people get awards and
That's
stuff.
informational, and you should be able to get a per
And
diem.
that should be a per diem, and people are questioning whether you should get one or not. Well, that should be, we go to it, you charge the per diem.
I never have and I never will.
And it's up to you
I
if
never have
you
either.
don't want to do it. So, I would just like to add under 1A, meeting with constituents.
Yeah.
Or similar events. And that's the only change I see based on the conversation, unless I'm hearing something from someone else.
Motion to approve the per diem policy with that
Other
change.
constituents. Okay, on item 1A. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Is there discussion on the item? Seeing none, roll call vote, please. And let's do this, can we have immediate effect on this?
No.
No,
All right, end of the month, because you got time to think
I
about it.
want to, yeah.
All right, okay. All right, so let's go to the end of the month, roll call vote, please.
Lemkool,
Yep.
Lathrop,
Yes.
Wheelock,
Yes.
Thomas,
Nope.
Rennie,
No.
Max Bauer,
No,
Inman.
Yes. I think it's important, just personally, that something of this nature tries to get unanimous with all board members, and if there are issues you disagree with, we should try to tackle those and see if we come up with an agreement by the end of the month. So if you have, why don't we try to do this for the ones that have any discomfort level with anything in this policy? If you could maybe get it to Chris and she'll type it up and send it out to us, and then we can then we'll have some information available for the end of the month.
okay.
And then that might make it, because it would be nicer if there was a consensus among all of us about how we should handle per diem rather than some of us disagreeing and agreeing.
Okay.
I think it would look better from the public's perspective. Commissioner Rennie?
Yeah, I think the public is what matters here,
Yeah.
okay? And I see this committee sitting on its ass for a year, not doing a job. And I think the county and the residents of this county deserve some accountability. This is nonsense, why this came around, and we all know it. And my suggestion is we make a policy that the public can understand and that is fair to everybody, and that you leave the commissioners alone.
Okay.
We're elected officials.
Does this policy do that or does not?
I'm not so sure.
Okay, well, read it over and then give us your opinion.
I also had some suggestions at the ad hoc committee, and I never got answers on those. I don't know if I want to go into them now or not.
I think that was the reason why we weighed into the recommendation,
Okay.
is to leave it to the discretion of the individual. If he or she believes that they went to a meeting and it was important to them, then they should get the per diem. And to take away the crossing off of per diems or judgmental things, as long as it just didn't fit those 4 items on the
I
salary.
understand.
Then we would
I
just,
think that all has helped.
yes.
But my issue is going along for a year and 2 months and then finding out something that wasn't right.
Yeah.
When if it would have been handled at the time, it would never continued on.
Right.
And now we have a mess on our hands.
Yeah, it was.
And I don't
human error.
understand, honestly, what was behind the whole thing. And honestly, I'd like to know.
Well, I don't know if we're prepared to really talk about that right now. I guess the goal is try to get, I guess my purpose is to try to get beyond, we know that there was human error involved, and unfortunately there were some items that came out. But I think the goal of the committee was just, let's move forward and get it cleaned up so this thing doesn't happen again.
Agree, I think that's all well and good, but that still does not correct what happened and what has, and still going on, I might add.
And I think the issue there was the board agreed that when we approved it, it would stand approved, and the board never took action against the non-approval of those payments. So I think in essence, just said, we're just leaving that issue alone. It's been paid, and it's over with, it's over the bridge, it's done.
Well, I thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, yes, yep. Commissioner Lemkool.
One of the things, too, I think if the audit committee decides that there is a question about whether or not a per diem should be paid, I think a courtesy call to the individual is more in line with, rather than trying to send a letter or trying to
Put a
just
note in
write
the
it out,
box.
and then it goes through, and then all of a sudden, they get something in their box that says, I'm not going to allow this. There's got to be a way for us to be able to come back to you and say, this is why I went to that committee, and I want you to approve it, or I accept whatever you are going to give me. So there's got to be that, and I don't know how to write that in here.
But I think the only way that that would occur is if a commissioner submitted something that was a meeting of the constituent. I'll tell you what, sometimes it's very, I've been here for 22 years, sometimes it's hard to read what exactly,
Yeah.
because you only have like a short line to list the per diem, and you abbreviate what you did in terms of, like, I went to this meeting, went to that meeting, went to this meeting, and we're like, okay, what was that meeting, So, I mean.
But I
but
just,
you know
just
what,
the courtesy.
Yeah, but, the only way I could see us coming back and saying no, based on this policy, is if it was a ceremonial event or ribbon cutting ceremony that we would be aware of, then that we would just call, I think that you're exactly right, and we should, that's one thing you should type up and send in to Chris, that, that the process of whoever the chair of that committee is, would call the commissioner and just before they approve or deny something, talk with the commissioner.
Yep. Yep.
Yes, and I like that.
Okay.
Commissioner Wheelock.
As far as I'm concerned, and I haven't done claims and accounts for a number of years, but I have done it for 3 or 4 years when I first came here, and a couple of other times, I guess. But the fact is that, I can recall having bills come to claims and accounts that I had questions on, and I just marked them, and we got clarification before we approved them for payment. I don't know why per diems are any different than that. If the audit committee felt there was something in the claims and account, or in the per diem sheet that needed clarification, it should have been clarified before it was approved. I don't, I tend to agree with Charlie. I don't know how we got in this mess. I really don't. The fact is, there's a lot of things that I attend that I probably could put per diems in, and I choose not to. I'm sure there's probably been things that I've attended that I've put per diems in that someone, on this board or some other board might feel that I was not appropriate for. But, I'm thinking probably, the fact is that if there is something in the bill that I submit, whether it be for something I've done or a per diem, that the audit committee has a question on, they should ask for a clarification on that bill prior to payment, period. Whether I sold you a product and you're questioning whether or not you got what you paid for, or whether it's a per diem. All you have to do, if there's any bill, whether it be a per diem bill or something else, if you don't understand what you're being asked to pay for, get a clarification before you authorize the payment.
Right.
So the other thing is that this will be attached to the board rules.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
So for the ones that had, even the ones that voted yes, and certainly the ones that voted no, if you could get a comment to Chris and have her type it up, we'll have Chris type it up and get it to the rest of the commissioners in terms of what you would suggest as changes, so you would have more of a comfort level with this policy. That might be helpful for the end of the month. Okay. All right, moving on to, and that did pass by 4-3, by the way. All right, moving on to new business, legislative update, revenue sharing me. Okay, I was at I'm on the Michigan Association of Counties Service Corporation Board. Michigan Association of Counties has 2 separate entities. They have the Legislative Lobbying Board, and they have the Benefits Board. And counties sign up for Blue Cross Blue Shield, deferred compensation, retirement plans, all kinds of different things that they do to provide products to counties on a group basis to lower costs, and that's really our goal, okay? And I'm on their board of directors. The discussion at the last meeting, which was like last week, was an update by staff that was brought up, the question about revenue sharing and what's going on in the legislature, because there's a component now that's been kicked out that we have been unaware of, that I just about fell on the floor. So here's how it went. Staff gave the report and said, this is what's going on in revenue sharing. We have a bill in the House that basically says whatever your revenue sharing was when it was discontinued and we went to the tax shifting idea, that is going to be your revenue sharing amount, okay? And that's what we thought the governor had suggested. There's a bill in the Senate now that says 80% of your revenue sharing is going to be paid, and 20% is going to be withheld based on the judgment of the Treasury, based on a dashboard of components of county improvements to collaborate with other governmental groups to improve efficiencies and to get employee concessions. Those are the three main areas that they're talking about right now in the Senate. I and several other commissioners that sit on that board escalated to the ceiling. And I think Mac and the staff and everyone else got the message, is that, this is not there's no way that Treasury can properly judge those kind of factors per counties. And if we got to spend our time documenting all this stuff and trying to sell the Treasury on whether we should get our 20% or not, that's not right. And I said, for the counties like Grand Traverse, who already has a multi-veterans affairs, we have Benzie and Leelanau now. Benzie just came on board, with the health department cooperation with other counties, and the city. With our relationship with the city of Traverse City, the community health coordination. I said, and the concessions that we just recently got from staff members. I said, we're probably one of the models in this state in terms of some of the things that we've done over time that is just our normal practice of doing business. And we've done some things here recently that they would have on that dashboard. But what they're saying is if you've already done it, it don't count anymore. They want to move the bar up every year for the next 5 years for that 20%. So if year one, you're expected to do a little more. Year two, a little more. Next three or more. And if you don't continue to graduate up in this dashboard, you're not going to get 20% of that revenue sharing. And I've said, wait a minute, you're going to penalize the counties that have already done it, and you're going to reward the counties that have sat on their butt and done nothing. All right? Because now they can start doing it, and they're going to get their full 20% over the next 5 years. That's not fair, and everyone agreed to that. And I said, then I want to come back and say, this has nothing to do. Sure, counties should be more efficient. Counties should be more collaborative. Counties should, try to do, some, concession making for budgets and those kinds of things, just like the private sector. All those are just things that we should be normally doing. But revenue sharing was tied to paying for courts. And we're still paying for courts. Revenue sharing has remained flat for 20 years. Court expenses have gone up. We shouldn't be accountable for that 20% for what you want us to do. You should be paying us that 20% for the rising cost of the cost of handling courts over the last 20 years, which you've not increased. So we sent some marching orders back to staff to go back to the Senate and the House and say, no, we're not buying, and get with the Municipal League and the Township Association. We're not buying this stuff. Get with the administrators throughout the state and say, no, this isn't right. We're not buying this deal. And they said, basically, there's a challenge now in Lansing in trying to get rid of this 20%. So I wanted to advise you on that. Get on the phone to everyone you know in Lansing, your reps, Walker and Schmidt. We talked to them a little bit about this, but this is an update. This just popped up down in Lansing. That we need to send the message down there that this 20% brain thing they got down there on the dashboard is not a fair way to handle our revenue sharing.
Do you need a resolution to that effect, Gary, from this board?
It's on the agenda, so it would be a lot.
We can draw something up for you.
I think
Well, I got revenue sharing in it, so it would be allowable.
Well, for our meeting,
Why don't you have
Why don't we have Dave draft something up, get with the administrators, blast the administrators, sort of speaking with his little computer, and see if we can come up with a consistent resolution that all the administrators can bring to their boards, and let's get this thing handled in Lansing.
I agree.
Commissioner Rennie.
I had a question for you. In our last administrator's report, it talks about states looking at our unfunded pension and healthcare liabilities. And what the state did this year was go around the schools and give that money directly to the pension funds, rather than let the schools distribute that. Do you think, as a county that stands out with unfunded problems, that they could put that in the dashboard?
Well, they had this dashboard idea for a lot of things.
I mean, could that be added potentially?
It could.
Because I think last month you said you had to make payments equal to your contribution, or what they said you should.
Yeah, that was one of the.
At least to that amount.
That was Pileski's, I don't know if the one you heard about was the
Which is a
same.
little different than what Larry's talking about.
Yeah, the one that Pileski was talking about required you to pay 5% of the revenue sharing amount toward your unfunded liabilities.
Now, could that come off the
And
top?
I told Dina Bosworth at MAC, I didn't have a real problem with that, but if you were already fully funded, you probably shouldn't be required to do that. And if you, maybe, and as a fallback position, well, I probably shouldn't even talk about the fallback position, but, I didn't have as much angst over that as I did having to take 5% of the money and give it to road commissions, because we don't give money to road commissions. They're a separate unit of government in the state, and unless the county has taken them on.
That money is to pay for courts. I mean, to help pay for courts. I mean, that's the bottom line on this whole deal.
The whole revenue sharing started when the counties became financially responsible for the courts. Prior to that, the state paid for the courts.
You got it.
Let's do that way again.
And that's what the resolution says state.
So, Dave, can you get that ready for the board meeting?
You pay.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check and see where the current status is on this, but we did, in our meeting with Senator Walker and Representative Schmidt, let them know what we thought about them telling us how to spend our money.
Yeah, but we didn't know about this old dashboard deal that just popped up, so.
Well, the EVIP requirements have been out there for cities, townships, and villages for a long time, but counties have, not been a part of that, because we had a deal with the state in 2004. They were going to make us whole. And the governor, to his credit, put it in the budget for this year. The question is the legislature going to follow through on that?
It sounds like they're setting you up to fail so they don't have to pay the 20%.
We're going to make it more
Kind
hard.
of sounds like that, doesn't it?
That's the way to cut.
You don't get your 20%.
That's the cool way to cut it back.
Yeah.
Because, and I said, who's going to be the judge? Well, the Treasury Department. Oh, for God's sakes.
They're not accountable.
Yeah, who are they
They're accountable
to?
the
And how would they
executive.
even know? What judgment are they going to place that under?
They need
really
20 more
smart.
people in the staff in order to be able to follow through on that.
I mean, you think the per diem policy is a cluster?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Well, take this issue to the state treasury and tell them you want your 20% of your rest of your revenue sharing every year. So, yes, so everyone's agreeable to have Dave try to put something together and get it to the board meeting? All right, cool. Next item, second public comments. Any members of the public have any comment? Seeing none, we will close public comment.
We made them 10:30.
We have county commissioner reports. Anybody have a report? Commissioner Lathrop, and then we go to Rennie.
I went to the Peninsula Township meeting last night, and they're still struggling with stormwater. And they're also, I was kind of amazed about the troubles, I don't know if they're good or bad, but the troubles with the races that are on the, like the bicycle races and the marathons and that kind of stuff. Especially the one, the Cherry Festival, because farmers right at that point need to be driving their trucks with their fresh fruit on it to get them places where they can, handle this fruit, and the roads are closed. So, for these races. So it was kind of I'm just informational, they're struggling with it. Well, how do they have safety, have the races, and don't hinder the farmers with what they're doing? So that was a pretty interesting discussion. So I went to the meeting, I had a good time, and we saw the United States of America at work representing the Republic.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Rennie.
Yeah, I went to Pugsley quarterly meeting, 1,320 average inmates. They have about 20 vacancies. A lot of issues at that facility now with this new level of inmate. They had a suicide in February. They have another unknown death that, as of last Thursday, they're waiting forensic studies on. That's 2 people gone. 6 assaults in March. 6 taser incidents, K-9 search. Here's the bad one, 385 of those 1,320 inmates seek treatment for mental health. So it's a terrible situation going out there, trying to take care of these people. They require more care, and it creates havoc in these facilities. So that wasn't as good a report as we'd had in the past. Warden's very concerned about what's going on out there.
Wow. Thank you for that report.
One other question, I've had several emails from people on Power Island. Could you or Mr. Chair make a statement as to what the status of Power Island is right now?
It's not our decision, it's in the Parks and Recreation.
Okay, but can you say no decisions have been made at
Well,
least?
it's, at the moment, it's the same as it's always been.
Yeah.
Okay, I have
We
no
have, we
change.
have a caretaker, no change, nothing. It
I have
remains the
had,
same.
Several inquiries from constituents saying they're lost as to what's going on with it.
No.
Is it going to be turned over to a township?
No.
Is it going to be sold? All kinds of crazy stuff out there.
And I think you bring a good point up, because it did get some media time. I think that if the decision of Parks and Rec, if you've taken action, I don't know if you have or not, is to just have it continue to remain in the hands of Grand Traverse County. We're just going to continue to do business as normal. We need to get something out, so that's clarified to the public. I agree with that, totally.
I think it's important to note that we, as a county commissioner, told the Parks and Recreation to cut their budget. As part of to look at cutting their budget. We didn't say you had to. We said you had to look at how you're doing it. So we basically have told them they have to do something. But I don't know where it's going, because it's in their hands at this point.
All we have done is talk about ideas. It's no different than the ideas that we've talked about here, and suddenly I'm being asked if we've got the backhoe out in the parking lot ready to put in the new jail. We have only tossed out ideas.
Right.
The ideas that we have tossed out, some of them have come from this board. There's nothing wrong with exploring different ideas, and we do it in open meetings. We don't do it behind the scenes, and that's how these things get out. And they tend to mushroom. But no changes have been made on Power Island. None are anticipated to be made on Power Island.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Lathrop.
Well, that's one of the things at the meeting I was at Old Mission Peninsula, I wrote a letter to the editor about that, the opinion page. And I said, the opinion page started with the proposition, the proposal that we made a proposition, this board, to Old Mission Peninsula to take on Power Island. It never happened.
No.
No one. They said, well, we were blindsided.
No.
I was blindsided. We didn't
do
ever
that.
do that.
Yeah, we didn't.
So I
didn't.
I think that was a lot of citizens were unnecessarily alarmed, and so I think we need to make it clear that that was never our message.
Okay, Commissioner Wheelock.
Well, I suppose I can do that one first, and then I'll get to the other one. In the last couple weeks, I've probably heard from at least 25 or 30 residents in Long Lake Township, including members of the Lautner family that donated a sizable piece of the property that is now Twin Lakes Park, that they absolutely oppose any discussion about closing Twin Lakes for swimming. You know, the local people absolutely oppose the possibility of closing that beach.
Okay.
So, and like I said, Terry Lautner spent an hour and a half being very verbal to me the other day about the fact that they donated that property for the use of the community, and they expected it to remain open to the community. They swam in that beach when they were kids, and they think it should stay that way. But,
Did you submit it per diem?
Parks and Recreation Commission is going to do their job. They're going to evaluate all of these things, and they'll come to us with a recommendation. Whether or not we accept the recommendation, that will be another whole discussion. But I will say that I have heard from a number of local citizens in Long Lake Township that absolutely oppose the possibility of closing that beach.
All right.
The other item, I had another one ahead of that one, then I wouldn't be on. Power Island is, again, that is a Grand Traverse County asset. I'm not prepared to give away Grand Traverse County assets. There's.
No one suggested
I know that.
that we give away Power
I know
Island.
what the other one was. I was amazed to open my TC Business News ticker the other day and read the article that Grand Traverse County was giving the former Health Department building to the pavilions.
We're leasing it.
I don't believe that agreement has been signed and
Yes, it
approved
was.
yet.
Yeah, I signed it on the 1st of April.
Option was signed.
The option.
The option.
So,
Well,
the option was
I
done
hadn't been
there.
made aware that had been signed. I know that we talked about it.
I was
I
approved.
was pretty surprised to have not heard that the lease agreement had been signed when it comes out on my ticker at 6:30 in the morning, when I'm not completely awake and I'm reading my emails, so.
That's
You
the
know,
problem.
And this is okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
We have to be able to talk about ideas at board levels without feeling like we're going to get run over just because somebody tosses out an idea that's outside the box thinking. I just don't think there's anything wrong with tossing out ideas. But
Until a motion is made, it's not going to, and approved, it's not happening.
that's correct.
Even a motion is a way to talk about an idea.
Sure.
So I think we ought to push back a little bit on this, that we should be able to talk about ideas without being accused of having it being a done deal.
Sure.
Well, that gets right back to my discussion about having a communications person in the
Yeah.
county. Which I've been fighting for 22 years,
Yeah, about time.
because if
And
we
good
don't,
luck with that.
if we don't tell our story,
Be nice if we could afford it.
okay?
So,
All right,
Maybe
Commissioner
we
Rennie.
could start our own newspaper,
could
that would probably help.
Maybe a good way
Yeah.
to do that would be to have our board chairman speak for the board or something like that, on a
I'd like it.
consistent basis, rather than all this dribble we have going around all the time. That
Yeah,
would
'cause
make it
they're-
a little clearer to the public.
the challenge is that you can do that except in elected officials, that elected officials have the right to be able to talk to the media.
Didn't say about,
know.
I'm not talking
I know.
about right. I'm talking about you
I know.
speak for the board.
So I try to speak for the board whenever I'm asked for something. The other thing to add to the pavilions is that they did receive the letter approving that they could start their PACE program. So their work is just beginning. So they did send that letter out previous to the approval of the 90-day lease option, and they did get approval for it. And so they're working very diligently, starting to diligently work toward implementing a PACE program for the citizens of Grand Traverse County. And of course, they're going to look at that building. One of the things I told them is that roof has to be done this year. And if they're not going to do it this year, then we're going to. And we'll have to take and add it back to the lease. So one way or another, in talking with Danny, that roof has to be done this year. So I am pushing very diligently, if they exercise that option, that they have to do it immediately.
All right, Commissioner Wheelock.
One other thing, and I apologize, I got it two-thirds done, it's laying on my desk. I will bring you next week a financial analysis of the natural gas contract that Danny Brown signed last week. We signed a 36-month contract this time, which is a lot different than what we've done in the past. But we signed a contract that is actually lower than the current stock market price for natural gas. Natural gas is just going through the roof, and the surplus in the Midwest is down probably as low as I've ever seen it, and if not lower. And therefore, the opportunity came to sign the contract to lock this down for us for 36 months. The net cost increase over 2013 to 2014, and that same number will be used for 2015 and 16, is about $5,800 increase. but I will bring you analysis that'll show that we have literally saved the citizens of Grand Traverse County hundreds of thousands of dollars since we started negotiating a natural gas contract in 2009.
What is the total amount going to be?
We use about 25 million cubic feet for the county. The total cost will be about $121,000.
So about 5%, or a little less, actually. That's good.
About $121,000 will be the total cost for natural gas next year. But what I'm trying to do right now is analyze it both by total and by some of the buildings, because I have the meter readings from the amount that was used at each one of the meters, and I can tell you what it costs you for natural gas costs at the Front Street building.
That's good.
And well, this campus is together. The jail, the district, or the historic courthouse, and the prosecutor's office, and the governmental center are all on one meter system. So I can't split those out for you, but I'll be able to tell you what it costs us for the Vasa building, you know, and all of the different buildings. And like I say, I've got it about 2/3 done, but I've had a lot of work, a lot on my plate, and we just signed this contract last week. So it should be, you know, it'll be good information. And the nice thing is, by locking it down for 36 months, we don't have to do this thing every 12 months.
Right.
Because it takes a lot of work.
Right. Well, we appreciate you
Nice
helping us
job.
out on that, because you're right in the thick of things with your business, so we appreciate that. Any other commissioner committee reports?
I just
Commissioner
had
Reddick.
one question for the administrator. We haven't heard much about our budget analysis numbers, and we were talking
Gonna wait
about
till
grass
June, I
cutting,
think.
snow plowing, payroll.
The grounds information is on hold until the snow clears. Danny was going to wait until the snow was done, and then he could get bids for that. You know, some other things that we are looking at are in the works right now. I don't have all that in front of me right now, but I can't tell you what exactly we're working on, but all the things that we identified as the board asked us to bring information back,
Yeah.
we're working on
That's
bringing
what
that
I'm talking
information
about.
back to you.
So that's in process?
Yep.
Thanks.
And, you know, the big numbers we don't know about, that will tell us where we really are with our budget is, you know, what is going to happen when the legislature adopts the budget for the, you know, we expect that to happen in June or earlier. They want to get out early so they can go campaign, and I think since they have enough money this year, it's not going to be as bloody of a fight to finish it up, so they're going to try and finish it up early. So that'll be good for us to know, one way or another.
Okay. Any other commissioner reports or comments? Seeing none, we'll close that item out. Notices and announcements, anybody want to?
Larry and I are going to Florida on the 19th.
Commissioner Maxwell and I will be leaving on the 19th for a long weekend. There's absolutely no connection between those dates, times, and flights.
And we talk about how these things get started all over the community, and you got to point that out.
But we will point out that Commissioner Maxwell's husband went alone to Florida. And now Commissioner Maxwell and I are now leaving for Florida.
Larry, just to let you know, there will be no LPT meeting tomorrow morning.
Oh, Central Dispatch and then right to Emergency Management?
That LPT is going to meet at a different time, and they haven't decided yet.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
So you won't have to show up at that meeting?
I got
Central Dispatch?
dispatch at 8, so
Okay.
we'll see what happens then.
And LEPIC is at 9.
All right, good. Yeah, I'll figure out what's going on. I'll ask what's going on with that meeting. Thanks for the update. Anybody else with notices and announcements?
Look at Chris Kramer's email on per diems.
Okay.
She has some good suggestions on there.
All right. And if you have any thoughts about what would make you having a comfort level when this gets to the board, please let us know. We can get into further dialogue on the policy, the per diem policy. Okay, there's no closed session, is that correct?
Correct.
So we just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Wheelock, seconded by Max Bauer. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I gotta ask you.